The department was housed in a single-storey detached block. It was a very homely place. 30 students, you knew each one individually, you got to know something of their background, something of their aspiration, and I think the students felt very much at home and that they were appreciated as individuals. That, I think, was probably the ethos of the place at that time, and one that I personally recall with great joy.
Conditions were a bit primitive in those days. We had a mixing desk with rotary faders that I think had been inherited from Stockwell, and before that, I think, long before, from the BBC. It had faders that tended to have dirt in them, and so as you turned the knob, you got a lot of sort of noise on the sound, so it sort of made sounds like that. And Eric would then come along when we spotted this. First of all, try and get rid of it by rapid rotation. If he couldn't do that, then he'd produce his Canon WD-40. I think in 1980-81, we were actually designing and setting up the course and scrambling along frantically to try and deliver it, and learning, if you like, by doing.
Slaves of Passion, 83, 84, Andy Birtworth.
Yeah, my third-year film. Bit embarrassing to see now, but at the time I thought it was good.
I hear it's got some good... I need to look at it. Has it got some good shots?
There's some good stuff of Nick, of course, who later became head of department. But when we made that film in 1983, 1984, Nick was the lecturer who looked after film production.
Certainly, Miss Dinamica.
When I joined the department as a student in 1981, Nick Burton had only just joined the department, and before that he'd been a filmmaker. And I remember his lectures were very stimulating. I really enjoyed them. The very first lecture we ever had, he showed a film called Letter from Jane by Jean-Luc Godard and Jean-Pierre Gorin, which is, I can't remember how long it is, but let's say it's a 20-minute film of one shot, and it's a static shot of a news photograph of Jane Fonda in Vietnam. Of course, most of the people in the room, including myself, had never ever seen anything like this. It was like a sort of message from outer space.
A suicide attempt is often a cry for help. Was yours one of these?
Of course it was. She wouldn't have done it otherwise, would she?
It's all right, Tim. I don't mind admitting it.
During the 1970s, there had been a television studio here, black and white, open reel tape recorders that was set up to aid the teacher training, little projects they did, role play, that sort of thing. When the new course arrived from Stockwell in the early 80s, the TV studio was refitted with state-of-the-art colour technology.
Dad only taught me for a year because he taught television, and then sadly, I think in my second year, he passed away. But I remember him being a real character and a good head of department, I think. He was very much sort of old school. He'd come from television, he'd been a TV producer, and there was a sort of theatricality about him that I think most people found quite charming and quite amusing as well.
I think we were very lucky to be involved in the early days of an exciting new course. I don't think it had been taught anywhere else, that sort of course, and it was a privilege and most of the time a pleasure to be involved in it.